Okay, Wallace, you should see it now. You can actually go and share the links on Facebook. Okay, Wallace, you should see it now. You can actually go and share the links on Facebook. Okay, Wallace, you should see it now. You can actually go and share the links on Facebook.
Kim should be doing that.
Okay.
Right now. I'm going to go on my phone and see as well.
We'll give people a few minutes to join us before we actually start talking.
And I just see Kim should be doing it. But I'll turn my volume down so there isn't a feedback.
That's wonderful. How are you this evening, Wallace?
I'm very excited to be here with you. This is a great opportunity to share with you.
I am so glad that we're doing this again because I have grown to really appreciate you and the courage that it takes to do what you're doing is absolutely highly commendable. Most of us don't get to that level of play. So I thank you for taking us on as a community. We're talking this evening to Wallace Goode on Patiently Waiting for Nothing. This is episode 25 for us. As you know, we're always looking at being fully joyful and patiently waiting for nothing. And sometimes we have to include outside sources to assist us in doing that. Some of you may know that I moved to South Shore a couple of years ago when I came back to Chicago. And I ran into a group of political activists and gardeners and safety people. And all of a sudden they reminded me, we have work to do. And so we started collaborating with all the people that we could that would help us bring transformation to South Shore. Because if I'm going to be here, you know that it has to be some beautification and order in place, right? So one of the people that we ran across was Wallace Goode Jr. And that was a divine interaction or engagement because Diane, I believe Diane said, listen, I want you to come and meet Wallace. He's running for Alderman, and we have to really find out what he's about and assist him because that's the only one that I think will make a difference for us. So Wallace, we actually came to find you. That's kind of scary, isn't it?
No, it's humbling. It's an energy that, as you say, thank you for taking this on, but I say thank you for giving me that energy. You know, most people never get that energy that you give, that Diane gives. Yeah. Most people never have the opportunity to rise based on people helping make that happen. So I'm just beyond grateful. Days I'm not sure that I even am deserving, and then somebody will say something and I'm like, we can work on that, and they go, that's why you're going to be the Alderman.
That's right. We can work on that. And so we have questions, and when we first talked, you weren't on the ballot. Now you're on the ballot. We have several other people running, but before we get into all of that, I would like for you to introduce yourself to people so that they can know why we actually love you and why it's important for them to get to know you as well.
I appreciate that. It's always a challenge for me to talk about myself. My whole life has been doing. I see a problem and I just jump in. That's good 99% of the time. Occasionally my wife says, I got it. So chill. So 99% of the time I just sort of jump in. And I tell people I'm a kid from Woodlawn, born and bred in Woodlawn. I'm anchored in our community, but I've been internationally trained. And that's a real important feature. Just last weekend, we had a panel at St. Philip Neri. And that was an exciting panel to be part of. But I remember St. Philip Neri because I graduated from high school, from Mount Carmel High School at St. Philip Neri. And you know how when you go up and get your diploma, you come back and you get back into your row? And I went up, I got my diploma, and my family and I left St. Philip Neri Church immediately because I had a job getting me outside of Chicago. Because back in the day, the gangs were shooting, and the gangs had gotten, at that point, notorious, certainly not even at the level now. But back then, it was a new issue. So I left Chicago the afternoon I graduated from high school. Wow. And did not live back in Chicago until I finished school. I stayed away, and I came back, moved back on the block I grew up on, and I came back ready to negotiate at a very different level with my academic experience, my international experience.
Yeah, that's so important, Wallace, that you speak about going away to come back, because most people don't realize that you do have to go away if you're talking about making a change, if nothing else, just to gather your resources.
And not only do you gather your resources, your imagination and vision of the world expands, and it never shrinks back down to what it was. I saw leaders around the world work on problems, some good leaders and some bad leaders. I went to a school, I went to Mount Carmel, that taught leadership, discipline, and teamwork. And if you think about those three components being hammered into your head, leadership, to whom much is given, much is expected. That is the beginning argument. Teamwork. You are no good by yourself. Like that lone wolf, we live by the pack and we win by the pack. Monday morning after a football game, if we lost, the team lost, we all lost. And we all felt it Monday morning. And when the team won, we all won on Monday morning. That's a value that if it's not instilled in your family, in your school, in your career, then you miss something when it comes to jobs like this. I'm all about the team. I don't go anywhere without the team. I'm a player coach. The team I've got to be on the court with the team. But last but not least, I've learned discipline. And much to the chagrin of my family sometimes. I grew up with a very strict father, and in hindsight, he helped, and Mount Carmel helped make me the disciplined adult man I am. The last thing I'll say about growing up is I was tutored in elementary school by University of Chicago students. And although I can't tell you if their tutoring helped improve my grades, what I can tell you is they brought us on campus. They took us to Northwestern, Loyola, and DePaul's campuses. And by the time I was out of elementary school, I knew I was going to college. I just didn't know which one. That is so valuable that people don't even realize how those young students, simply taking us to those campuses, introduced us to a world that many of us might not have seen otherwise.
Absolutely. And we'll talk more about this later, but that's what we have to do to a lot of the youth who are disenfranchised. They may not have parents available. They may be in the foster program. They may have aged out of the foster program, but they don't have parents advocating for them. So, at some point we have to create a way for them to have quality lifestyles like you're talking about, even if they don't have those other elements. But I digress. I'm sorry. We'll talk about that later. Because before we get to that point, I do want to ask you, you were president of the Chamber of Commerce.
The executive director.
Executive director. And you stepped down to do what? To run?
Yeah, you sound like my wife now.
People, like my children ask me, said, "Mom, you should be retiring." I said, "Look, I've retired 5 times already."
There we go. I can't get it right. One of the experiences that I had when I left Chicago was that I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I served in Central Africa, the Central African Republic, and I served in the Solomon Islands. The operative word there was volunteer. I wasn't making any money for those 2.5 years. It's a 2-year tour. So I wasn't making any money. I was volunteering to help organize in both of those countries, but I was learning culturally how to deal with people who didn't have anything and how to take their dreams and make them reality. Mm-hmm. Lee Iacocca said in a broadcast, give me 1 Peace Corps volunteer versus 3 MBAs. Because the MBAs, when you give them stuff, they do well with it. Peace Corps volunteers do amazing things with nothing. So I learned that. I learned, you don't look for the handout, you look for the hand up. You don't look for somebody to fund it, you look for how you can make that happen. That's really a lot. And that, again, whether it was Mount Carmel, whether it was Peace Corps, I bring back to my community those acquired skills elsewhere.
That is so wonderful. And we'll talk about that some more later, because those are skills. You're speaking skills, so I love that. But tell me this, how many candidates do we currently have running for the 5th Ward Alderman slot?
It's an interesting race because of the dynamics of the number of candidates who are on the ballot. I announced my candidacy July 1st. I was the first candidate to announce my candidacy. And I thought it was going to be a battle between David and Goliath. Goliath being a 24-year incumbent who had all this money, and me, the new, trying to beat Goliath. Well, the next month, Goliath decided not to run. And overnight, it went from David and Goliath to a bunch of Davids, okay? There are 11 of us, down from 12, 11 of us on the ballot. And each person on that ballot brings a richness that's unique to that individual and rare in many, many cases. The challenge is there are experts in each of those 10 other people and little ability to build coalitions. And that's, again, what is so critical where we are right now. When somebody after 24 years vacates a seat, it creates a huge vacuum. Alderpersons around will try and take advantage of the 5th Ward. We need to know that. Monies that are on the border, this historic game of rope-a-dope on new aldermen is documented. We don't need a freshman alderperson going in there, losing our funding and not knowing how to negotiate with other aldermen in downtown. So there are 11 of us running. I have great respect for all of the candidates, and I always tell them that I would immediately put a cabinet together that would include all of them and their expertise to help me run this ward when I become the alderperson.
Then why is it so many, though? Why do we need 11 on the ballot? Or 12, whatever. Why?
Yes. I think, as one of the candidates said, in the last election, nobody was willing to run against the incumbent, and the incumbent was that strong. So he decided to run since nobody else would run. And there were like 3 or 4 at the most. I can't even remember how many. And unfortunately, the incumbent won by a mere 167 votes.
Wow, that's close.
In a runoff, which told the entire population that she clearly was not in, the community was no longer in favor of her, and she needed to think about doing something else. She won by a small, slim majority, and for the next 3.5 years, continued to do business as usual. And we understand business as usual. So I think a lot of people have been frustrated. A lot of people have issues that they want to have addressed, and they think that by becoming the alderperson, they will have the time to advance their specific issues, whether it's a candidate who's about crime, or a candidate who's about affordable housing, or a candidate who's about reparations, or a candidate who's about economic development. They each come with a passion in those areas. I come with an expertise in how to manage those areas. That's the difference.
Well, you almost answered my next question, but because I'm asking you, what three characteristics about you are distinct from the other candidates? You know, like, why are you our choice? Now, we know this. We already know because we know the other candidates. We've been to the forums. We've met them. We did our research. You know, anybody know me know that I go deep into the books on stuff, you know, that's important to me. And you talk about more of the same. When I first moved over here and I had visitors trying to come to visit me, they couldn't, more than 3 times, they could not turn down my street because there were bullet shells numbered, over 30 bullet shells numbered, with the police blocking the intersection so that no one could come down the street. And no, that I'm not living in a gang war, terror war, you know, whatever that is. No, absolutely not.
However, a phrase that I use and hope more and more people understand, that in the 1970s, when the federal government declared war on poverty, war on crime, war on drugs, overnight, our communities became war zones. Every day now, when you turn on television and you see what's going on in the Ukraine, that's a war zone. Their infrastructure has fallen apart. Their food supply has been interrupted. Our communities go through some of the very same things. They are food deserts, they're pharmaceutical deserts, and there are places where shootouts happen all the time. Doesn't that sound like a war zone to you?
Yep.
Yet our government proposes Band-Aid fixes to a 50-year-old war. Until they understand and acknowledge that it is a war, they will always offer us Band-Aids in the form of assistance programs. We're sending the best advanced military equipment in the world to fight that war, and we're giving Band-Aids to our inner city communities to fight that war.
Yeah.
We need to understand that.
We need to understand that. And we need to understand that we have so much power in us as individuals that we don't have to accept the handouts. And like you said early on, there's resources in nothing.
It's valuable.
Yeah.
I get excited when I hear people say that, because that's the fight that I have fought most of my life. Mm-hmm. You know, that's the challenge I have been blessed to be given in my life. And it goes back to Mount Carmel. To whom much is given, much is expected. When I went to a college, I was a dean there, and I was interviewing for the position, and I asked the president, although this is not my job title, what is the dropout rate, the attrition rate for African American students? And he didn't have an answer for me right away. And he finally called me back. 2 red flags. Didn't have an answer, didn't give it to me. He called me back and said, I hope what I'm about to tell you will not dissuade you from accepting my offer as the dean. And before he could say it, I said, it will not. What will dissuade me is whether you agree to resolve the problem that you're about to tell me. He said 70% of our African American students don't graduate.
Wow.
The national average is 55% of African American students drop out their first year of college. 55%. So this school was not only dealing with that, but had another 15% on top of it that were not making it through their academic curriculum. And I said, I will propose a strategy to deal with them. And if you agree to it, I'll accept your offer. And he said, I agree. I see. One of the joys of being underestimated is folks think, oh yeah, no problem. No problem. 4 years later, we graduated 90% of African American students. 40%, 90% in 4 years.
Yeah.
The reality was understanding what the problem was. And then working backwards, what do we want to do the day they arrive on campus to fix it so that they can graduate in 4 years? Not hard to do when you approach problems that way.
Right. And I think that's the experience that you and I share, except that I was the minority affairs director at a predominantly white college where we had that same attrition rate, right? It just students didn't stay. But then I came on board, and we were graduating students left and right, you know.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they actually, and not only was I involved with the African American students, but also the Malaysian students, the Japanese. They said, well, you're the minority affairs advisor, aren't you?
That's right.
So, yeah.
But that's why we changed our title to multicultural affairs.
Yes.
Because our minority affairs person was dealing with international students.
That's right.
Latino students. So I love that you did that, because you understand. But that's also one of the distinctions between me and my other competitors. I'm an educator.
Yeah.
I'm a believer that you take a complex concept and you break it down into bite-sized bits of digestible information. That's what a good educator does. And we don't have time for a rookie to go down to City Hall and lose what South Shore, Grand Crossing, Woodlawn, High Park, and Kenwood have. What we do have, we need somebody who's an experienced negotiator to make sure we hold on, and who's a committed educator to help the next generation of political activists and leaders know how to speak University of Chicago,
That's
speak
right.
City Hall, speak South Side. It's critical that we communicate to all of those constituent groups simultaneously, and that we are not awed and amazed by their ivory towers.
That's right. So you said one. What are the other two things that distinguish you from the other candidates? One was being an educator. What else would you say?
An educator.
Mm-hmm.
The second is that for the last 11 years, my responsibility has been building businesses, helping a business wherever it is go to where it wants to go. That is a whole different language. It's not the language of love. It's the language of bottom line, green profit. Mm-hmm. And you've got to be able to speak the language of businesses for them to get on board. You've got to figure out what they need in order for them to grow, and then how you incorporate their growth in the community in a win-win-win scenario for everyone. One of my career opportunities was to train executives of Fortune 100 companies, figure out how to open up operations in other countries. You got to think about that. We're very successful, but when we go into other cultures, we mess up all the time. We make cultural assumptions about the people that we are dealing with all the time. And my company said, we will help save you $1 million. That was our guarantee, because we know that your majority culture execs, because that's who you normally have doing this, are not culturally savvy in other cultures. They make foolish errors. We're going to help you not do that. Wallace, go talk to him. And that was my boss. Wallace, talk to him. Tell them how they need to understand the culture, the rules, the unspoken rules on religion, on the relationship of elders and young people, women and men, how different it is. But understanding the subtle differences, we see food, clothing, music, and language really easy. But we don't see the underlying values in a culture, and we know all the time that that happens right here in the city. Because you live in the city, you think you know what to do in Jackson Park, even though you live on the northwest side. Right. You think you know better than the people who live here. That is an example of people who are not of the culture, good intended. I really want to say that they're good intended. They just don't get it. And we need to be able to make them understand they don't get it. This is not your game. This is not your culture. They don't get it. So when I say that, I say that has been why I bring to the table an expertise in working with businesses. When I worked for the city of Chicago, I helped train communities of unemployed, underemployed, and illegally employed individuals to work and add to Chicago's workforce. My office received a mayor's award for being a speedboat in a sea of ocean liners. And by that, I mean, we saw a problem and we were nimble enough to fix it rather than have to go through the bureaucracy of typical government. And I got a great reputation as give it to Wallace. And one guy said, give him the ball and let him run. And again, whether it was students of color turning that around, whether it was taking businesses that couldn't find folks and having them get hired and stay on board because we trained them the right way, is a second expertise. So training employees, talking and recruiting business, and training business leaders is what I've been doing. And I will continue to do that, whether it's 71st Street, 67th Street, or as the businesses on 53rd Street. No, I will not abandon them either. Well, that's number two.
That's number two. What's number three? Well, I was going to add to that. I was going to say the skill set that you speak to is being a builder. Most people don't know that being a builder requires so much patience and foresight that most people will give up before they get the result that they're looking for. So most people aren't comfortable being builders because they want the immediate gratification. You know, they think that success is supposed to be right here, right now, boom, boom, boom. But you have to take steps. And sometimes those steps are baby steps. So, you know, having a skill as a builder, you know, even if it's no matter what it is, you know, being a builder is a very high skill set. So, yeah.
The third and final skill set that I think is critical, I worked for the Mayor Daley Jr., and I managed $131 million budget. Managing money is a skill set.
Yes, it is.
I can't even tell you, when I was hired, it was very clear the mayor said, we want you to come in, we want you to do this, we're very excited, and you can do whatever you need to. And then when the mayor left the room, the budget director said, we've lost $5 million and we don't know where it is. The secretary said, you can't fire these people because they were appointed by the mayor and you have to work with them. And the public information officer said, this is a scandal looking not to happen. Welcome aboard.
Wow.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And it was not, there was no malintent in anybody that I ended up working with. People, the $5 million, people had done accounting errors and were not in compliance, not out of malicious intent, but they served people on the wrong side of the street, so they were not eligible for funds, and now they spent the money, and therefore it's out of the system.
Oh.
Those kinds of errors. people who retired and nobody could handle them. 2 people said, Wallace can, give them to Wallace. I had 2 people who had retired on the job. They had been there 40 years. They weren't doing anything but collecting their money and waiting to, it wasn't 40 years, until they retired.
That's right. I got what you're saying. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They were really good people. Mm-hmm. But they had been in a government job a long time that didn't require a whole lot.
Wow.
And lastly, since I'm a troubleshooter, I figure out how to solve the budget problems, where the money is, how to balance it. And my mother was a financial supervisor for the Cook County Public Aid Department. She would teach folks how to manage their money. And that was a talent, although she admits, she says someday she failed me in my early years as a teenager. In the end, she was very pleased with my fiscal responsibility. I know how to manage money. I know how to manage people. I know how to educate for the next generation. Mm-hmm. My commitment is to help the next generation of activists from our 5 communities run this bad boy. And I think that we can do it.
I think we can do it too. And let's talk about those 5 communities. Let's look at each of the communities, and then if you can, specify the issues that you see going on currently and ways that you may have to actually solve those or bring resolution to those issues.
Let's go from north to south.
Okay.
Just from a geographic standpoint.
Yeah.
I spent time with folks who live in Kenwood, and that's the 5th Ward, north of 51st Street, east of the Metro Tracks, all the way to 47th. And they have 3 major issues. Crime and safety is an ongoing concern. More and more elderly seniors who live in this area find that leaving their condo is less comfortable. They don't go out at night because they don't feel it's that safe anymore. And they clearly would like a greater police presence. We don't necessarily need to police. We might need security. We might need eyes in some way, but they need to feel that when they go out and walk to the store, somebody's looking after them, which makes perfect sense.
Yes.
The second thing that they really need to recognize is the safety in high rises. Oh. As the fire indicated yesterday, as the Mac property debacle, when the Algonquin and Iroquois, whatever the buildings were, the heat went out and they had to evacuate the building as windows are popping out in the Solstice on 56th Street. Wow. What's going on with high rises?
That's a lot. Yes.
It's a whole lot. That's just in Hyde Park. Those 3 high-rise catastrophes. Who's looking into them? Who's taking care of them? Who is making those residents right, healthy?
Are those infrastructure issues? And do we have compliance? Is there a company or who oversees that the buildings are kept to a certain standard? Is that a position in the government?
Each one of those has a different issue, but they all were part of the city of Chicago's inspection process. The fire in the building last night, as I heard, I have not read this myself, said there were numerous violations.
Wow.
And how can that building continue to operate for those violations for so many years? So people are looking into that. The Mac property that they had to evacuate on Christmas Eve, the updates and the equipment installed by Mac, as I understand it, they never pulled any permits to do it. So they made a major legal error. That's why they're being sued right now. And then last but not least, windows are popping out of a building, a new building. The question is why and what caution is being taken. So the 3 things that I hear in Kenwood are increased police presence or safety in high rises, whether it's a fire or elevators that are going out, those windows popping out, and responsible, accountable management companies. And the feeling is that we in Hyde Park are losing the battle on accountable management companies. We need to look into that. That's Kenwood. That's just one neighborhood, and those are 3 issues that they say are hot.
Those are very hot, and and I didn't know this going into this call, so I'm going to have to do some more research. But it really causes me a lot of concerns, especially when you talk about windows popping out, and all I can think about is children. Just some crazy accident happened, and a child just touches a window and just falls on the ground. That's scary.
It's absolutely scary. And the question is, was that a management decision, or is that just the reality of construction in 2022? Did management decide to cut corners, or is this what we need to begin to expect from construction in the future? I say, I don't know yet.
No, and I say that part of it too is there's certain communities that get, they get the low end of the stick.
That's right.
The short end of the stick.
That's right.
And mostly because we tend to not want to complain. We don't want to cause trouble. We don't want to speak up. We don't want to rock the boat. And we're going to have to start rocking some boats, because this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable.
And we don't want to rock the boat, but we've also been appreciative of the short end of the stick because it's part of the stick. Our standards have been so low for so long.
Come on. Yep.
When the landlord says, I'm going to give you a space heater right now because we're having problems with the furnace, and you become appreciative of the space heater, no, he needs to fix the boiler.
That's right. That's right.
But people accepted, and I can't remember who said it, but it was be careful of what you accept from people, because in the future, that's what they will give you.
That's right. We train people how to treat us.
That's right. That's exactly right. So when I think of the reality of that one neighborhood, those are 3 issues. When I think of Hyde Park, people go, well, Hyde Park is doing all right. Hyde Park is okay. When I think of the energy that has been spent environmentally, making sure that Promontory Point has been preserved in a way that is in keeping with its history and its community. The people that fought that, Jack Spicer has led that charge. The Promontory Conservatory has led that charge. And they are role models on Lake Michigan for other communities who are trying to preserve and protect the environment. So Hyde Park has one of the 3 major issues is preservation of the environment. That is Jackson Park, the Point, 57th Street Beach. That's a major concern. Mm-hmm. Second part is the economic reality that, again, when I was a dean at the University of Chicago, I was asked to moderate, and it's almost what the people in Kenwood are saying, a panel on housing between students and management companies in Hyde Park. The students were saying, we're being taken advantage of, Dean Goode. We need help in bringing them to a manageable debate so that they hear us, because individually we complain and they don't do anything. We need a forum so that we can put our complaints out there, know that they were heard, and demand action. So I was, again, blessed as a dean at the University of Chicago to moderate that panel between management company, real estate management company in Hyde Park and the University of Chicago students. To their credit, the management company, Mac Property, said, here are the things that we will take care of. And literally 1 year later, when the owner of Mac Property, Eli Unger, was at that meeting, they had accomplished 95% of what they said they were going to do. That's good business. So I give them credit for saying, here's what you told us were the problems. Here's what we've worked on for the last 12 months, and 97% of them have been resolved. We didn't do it all, but we're still working. I got to give them credit for that. But housing is an issue. People are being forced out of Hyde Park because it is no longer affordable. People recognize that the creation of places like View 53 and City High Park and the Solstice is high-end property, which has a higher premium and return on investment for the developer. But that means that people who are not making that high-end kind of money can no longer afford to live in this community. People in Woodlawn would say, boo-hoo-hoo, because Woodlawn is being hit 10 times worse than Hyde Park. But the reality of it, it's still, Hyde Park goes through the same kinds of reality. Third and final in Hyde Park is behind the times in the sense of what's been going on around the South Side. Hyde Parkers are shocked when there's a shooting in Hyde Park, recognizing that that's because Hyde Park has been pretty safe for many, many years. So suddenly it's becoming less safe, and people don't know how to deal with that. I dealt with a senior today who told me that as she walks down the streets of Hyde Park, she just puts on her Detroit. I'm like, excuse me? I said,
yeah.
But she said, I just go Detroit on them. She's 78 years old. I just go Detroit on them. She looks them in the eye, and little grandma stares them down, and then she's like, step aside, and keeps walking. Mm-hmm. I'm like, your gray hair can get you away with that, but recognize that not everybody can go Detroit on them.
No.
So I should run a class on how to go Detroit. I'm like, yes, you should. So, it's becoming more and more challenging because as Hyde Park becomes a destination for many, many people, it brings an element who may not have the same values of community that longtime Hyde Parkers have, mm-hmm. that students might have, that small town might have, that tourists might have. Hyde Park is a small town. Hyde Park is a company town. Hyde Park is a student town. And Hyde Park is a tourist town.
Wow.
All of those elements have major impact in this community, and therefore that element who doesn't value those things is disruptive. Mm-hmm. However, the university has come a long way. I mean, I have to give them their props as they continue to work to strengthen this community. They have come a long way. At one time, the university even considered, many years ago, leaving Hyde Park, and we are all blessed that they did not. But as a kid growing up in Woodlawn, I can tell you, I was stopped by the University of Chicago police when I was in high school, and the police told me, you don't belong here, go back to your neighborhood. To this day, whenever I used to be in meetings with university police, I would look around the room trying to see if that
Who said that to me?
So I would eliminate all the women officers, all the officers of color, and all the young officers, and there would only be about 5 or 6 guys who were old enough, and I would pay attention to them to see, because you never know who comes back to be your boss one day.
I know that's right.
I never found him, and the guys that I worked with were absolutely good guys. Mm-hmm. So, but every now and then I'd want to like, were you the one who told me that I didn't belong here? Wow. I'm a dean here now. Don't even, you were so wrong, Mm-hmm. So that brings the last and final challenge, which is a great love-hate relationship. The university saved Hyde Park. I cannot ever pull away from the university. I'm a kid who was tutored by University of Chicago students. Mm-hmm. I years ago said I wanted to retire to a college town near the water. And about 5 years ago, I woke up like, I'm here. Oh my God, I never thought about it. I'm in a college town near the water, okay,
Yeah.
That's exciting because the university brings things to a community that if it wasn't here, we wouldn't benefit by them. We wouldn't benefit by the international nature, as you talk about, of students just in a restaurant and the conversation. They bring some richness. I have a young lady from India who's working on my campaign who's like, we will bring students because they need to know more about our community. Mm-hmm. That is the richness. So, Hyde Park, It said by increased violence, affordable housing, and balancing the needs of the university with the needs of the community. The best example I'll use on that is at a meeting once, the university made a proposal, and the issue was balancing the needs of students with the needs of the community. And anybody who reads that term balance means that somebody wins and somebody loses. And I couldn't read the document without thinking that the university students will win and the community will lose. So I told the president, I said, what we need is to write something about balancing, not the needs, but adjusting the needs of the students and the community, accommodating the needs of the students and the community, incorporating the needs of the students and the community. Anything other than balancing the needs. I'm so pleased that they changed the opening to incorporating the needs of the students and the community together. That was a rich opportunity for a blending that makes sense. So the university can be a powerful, powerful, positive influence, and at the same time, not always best for a less educated, financially less well-off members of our community. That's Hyde Park. Woodlawn, I grew up in Woodlawn. My family has lived in Woodlawn since 1962. My friends still live in Woodlawn, and they remind me regularly of what's going on that I need to know about. And they go, first of all, you know when they put that library, that it messed up everything on Stony Island, and they didn't ask us about that. Where am I going to get the bus to work? Nobody told me that I could not get a bus where I've been getting it for like 10 years, and now I need to walk 2 blocks to catch the bus. And in the dusty area, I got dirty before I got to work because the traffic was horrible there, and you can't get across the street to... They went on, and as I just listened, I'm like, what are you really, really, really upset about? They're like, because they didn't ask me.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. They didn't include, because most of the time, any time you're doing any type of organizational change, community change, transformation, you have to include the people that will be affected by the change. Otherwise, it's just like, we're just going to tell you what we're going to do, and you're going to have to accept it. And that's not how you treat community.
And that's all they said. And, I'm like, so didn't the alderman hear you say that? And that's when people start swearing, and I won't say, don't repeat what they said, but it was clear that they did not feel that they were heard, plain and simple. And I said, were you not heard? And one person said, we were not given the opportunity to voice our concern about this piece, about Stony Island being closed down the way it is and how it will impact our lives. They knew that it was going to happen. People who live in 6430 talk about their windows have to stay closed now because of the amount of dust that has come up off the road. That is the result of construction and advancement. I'm not going to say we shouldn't do that, but people should have been told this is going to be one of the liabilities and negative nuisances and inconvenience while we bring the first Black President's Center outside your front door.
Yeah. We
apologize for the next 12 months of inconvenience. And in fact, y'all who live in this building, you should get passes the very first week for your inconvenience.
Hello. That's how you do that, though. Yeah.
That's how you do it. That's all. But people don't do that. So Woodlawn is certainly still struggling with the Obama Presidential Center. Woodlawn certainly is struggling with increased violence as well. I spend more and more time with Commander Watson and the 3rd District Police to try and get an understanding of where the hot spots are in Woodlawn and what the community is doing to help address the issue. I've said often that the police are overextended, that they've made promises, the government has made promises that they can't keep, and we need to understand that there's a gap. There's a gap between what the government can and will do and what we need, and what are we going to do? People say, I pay my taxes, and I go, great, your taxes get you this much of protection. But you put locks on your door, you put cameras, you deal with security officers, you do all kinds of other things to protect you. You don't rely on the police to completely protect you. Otherwise, you leave your door open. You never put bars, you wouldn't lock your car. You do all those additional forms of protection. The government says, we will educate you, and you only get this much education at CPS. And parents pay for tutors, and after-school programs and summer initiatives. We understand that. So when you say, I pay my taxes, understand that that's not enough anymore. Yeah. That's not enough. And what are we going to do to bridge the gap between what the government will and can do and what we want for our families, for our community, for ourselves, that quality of life? Obama Presidential Center, I'm absolutely excited to have it in our community. I think this is a world-class win. And we need to figure out how to make it a win for us as well, as opposed to saying, no, we don't want you here. You know, that's the people from the suburbs and Northwest Side saying, we don't want you to put the, be nice, President Center in our park.
Yeah.
And the people from the community go, we are so honored and excited. We don't want you to make this place unaffordable anymore. Let's make sure we understand that. We want to be invested and live here, but we're excited to have this rich, world-class opportunity. It's not even in our backyard. It's in our front yard. It's on our porch. It's so close. I love it.
Yeah.
That's Woodlawn.
Yeah. Yeah.
We go down to Grand Crossing, and from the people that I've talked to in Grand Crossing, they first have a neglected syndrome feeling. Like the alderman didn't even know that it was part of her ward, as I understand it.
Wow.
She was in a meeting, and the person gave her address, and the alderman said, is that in our ward? That tells you how neglected they were redheaded stepchild, okay? That's how she was treating them. Economic development. South Chicago is ripe for economic development. The commercial possibilities are endless. Who has taken on that issue head on? Back to, what does it take to recruit businesses? They want to know that their space is safe. They want to know that they have a workforce, and they want to know that you're not going to make 100 million% profit on them moving there, meaning taxes need to be used as incentives. Mm-hmm. Workforce need to be there saying, we will help train people for your job. We will help get you up and running. We expect you to contribute and stay in our community for an extended period of time. South Chicago is ripe for it. We need to think about that alternatives to youth. When you have a neighborhood that is in many ways with natural barriers all around it, whether it's the Skyway or the cemetery or Stony Island, it's isolated in some unique ways. We need to find alternatives for our youth. Mm-hmm. Certainly that's not just Grand Crossing, because that's true in all of our communities, but in Grand Crossing, we need something very, very specific for our young people to offer them alternatives. We have an exceptional high school there, and we need to make it better. We need to recognize that after-school programs need to be 100% ramped up and maybe 200% ramped up. Mm-hmm. When my son was in Mount Carmel Legacy School, I admit, small fib. I told him that he had to be, the school rule was you had to be involved in a sport and a club. That was the rule of the school. And he believed me, so he didn't go check it out. So he was in sports for 4 years, and he was in clubs. Mm-hmm. That's part of the leadership that I think is important to develop. Youth in Grand Crossing and South Shore need alternatives to the streets. Mm-hmm. Those alternatives need to be in form of internships. Those alternatives need to be in forms of entrepreneurships, summer jobs, mentoring programs. We have lost that whole category of skill training. What if you're not college material? Mm-hmm. What if you want to be a plumber? Well, we've made plumbers and electricians and pipe fitters less worthy of work, even though those women make $80,000, $100,000.
More money than me. That's right.
More money than me, okay?
Right.
And yet we have not encouraged a new generation of plumbers or electricians or pipe fitters. We haven't encouraged a new generation of policemen and women. And again, they've become so negative in our society that they can't even recruit people. That's challenging. We need to do that.
Yes.
A friend of mine has a golf program where she has 30 kids, African-American youth, getting scholarships to college, playing golf in Jackson Park. Who would have thunk?
Who would have thunk? Exactly. Yes.
We have a void. They could not find enough lifeguards last summer. Yet between the Southside Y and the Cultural Center and the 71st Street Beach, we have the training programs to practice. Lifeguards make $16 an hour in high school. And we're not flooding those programs with our kids? I don't understand that. Have we not thought that a high schooler making $16 an hour is an alternative to the streets?
Yes, it is. Absolutely it is.
We need to think about those opportunities. We need to think about the military.
Yep.
ROTC is a viable alternative. For my nieces and nephews, the military was a godsend for them. The military developed for them the discipline and the teamwork and the leadership that Mount Carmel developed for me. They didn't get it in their high school, but they got it in the military, and it has served them well their entire lives. We need to think about what our young people need in 2023, not what we needed in 2013 or 2003. It's different.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
The rules are different now.
Yes.
So when I go to Grand Crossing, I certainly go economic development along South Chicago. I go alternatives to our youth so that they can alternatives to the streets for our youth. And lastly, and again, not that all of these other areas don't need it, but it's back to we need to look at education in a whole new way. I support the formal education in schools like O'Keefe and Revere, but I also know that education needs to go beyond the classroom.
That's right.
I love what Diane and the Merrill Street Garden is doing to help young people understand a whole different value beyond the classroom. I love what young people are doing when it comes to martial arts and the discipline and the respect that it brings to the table. I almost believe everyone should do some form of martial arts.
Yep.
It teaches a skill set and a mindset that our children need. So when I think of education, I think that as an educator, my goal has been to help young people go from where they are to the next level. And that doesn't have to be in the classroom. In fact, I personally feel that some of my best learning was hands-on in the field and not in the class.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm with you on that. When I made the proposal to Carter G. Woodson to take the 8th graders to Egypt, they were like, "What, Miss Stewart?" I'm like, "Well, why do we keep taking them to Washington, D.C.? I mean, can't we do something beyond that? I mean, this is a new day. I mean, we're global. We're talking leadership because we were all about leadership at Carter G. Woodson. Lead yourself, lead your community, lead your family. Right. So, yeah, that's right. We have to give a whole new different vision to our youth. Yeah. And
so that's, I always know that you and I are in sync on so many things. Peace Corps Volunteer Alumni Association in Chicago selected a high school to send high school students to Ghana for a month to live with Peace Corps volunteers.
Wow. That's wonderful.
raised the money, made the connections, and then we met with them when they came back, and the testimonies were beyond anything any of us could have ever expected about changing their lives. And we're like, if this is all it takes, come on. Why can't we do this all the time?
That's right.
Why can't we organize ourselves enough to get our children alternatives to the streets? Because that was 30 days, and those kids came back different people.
Completely different people. Yes.
You understand it completely.
Yeah.
So that's what I get also about being an educator. I worked as a dean at 4 different universities and colleges. And my job was to always help students get beyond where they were to the next level. On a simple sense, it's like manufacturing. When something, raw material comes in, and you add value all the way, and at the end of it, you got a car, okay?
Yep.
All students come in, and we beat them up, and we knock them down, and we challenge them, and we pull them and tug them. We open their brains, we pour stuff in, and we take stuff out, and 4 years later, we produce a product that is more creative, intellectually more challenged, and a world-class citizen if we did the right job.
If you did the right job. That's right.
So I love being an educator. And my commitment as the alderperson is to educate completely the next group of activists who need to run the 5th Ward. Definitely.
All right, you have one more community, and I'm listening. You have one more. Let's go.
I've had a relationship with South Shore since high school. I always say I'm a kid from Woodlawn, and all my girlfriends were from South Shore, and we went to Hyde Park for our social life. So all 3 of those communities back in there. And we went to the pool in Grand Crossing.
Yep.
Back then, you didn't have to be from the neighborhood to go to the pool over there.
Oh, no. I learned how to swim at Washington Park.
There we go. All the way. See, our neighborhoods were open to us much, much more.
Yes.
I remember South Shore, and that's why it's sometimes a bittersweet memory, because I know and remember when 71st Street was a destination, a social destination, from restaurants and movie theaters and shopping. I remember taking the Metro from downtown to Jeffrey just because we wanted to take the train and see what it was like. And then we couldn't figure out how to get back home. But that's another whole story. We were like in 8th grade, all right? We were downtown and decided to take the train. And we knew Jeffrey wasn't that far from where we lived.
Right.
But it was much further than we realized it when we finally got there. We walked home. And it was okay to walk home.
You were safe.
We were safe, We were scared because we didn't know where we were, but we were safe.
That's right.
And some guy said, well, you just follow the tracks, and when it curves, curve with it. And that got me back to Woodlawn.
That's it. That's it.
That's it. And we were in 8th grade at the time, So when I think of South Shore, I think that it, more than any of the 5 communities, is ripe for what I bring to the table. The 71st Street corridor, I believe there are businesses with the right kind of incentives will flock to that transient, strong, commercial, structured corridor. God, creative stuff. What do we need? Somebody said the other day, well, we don't need brick and mortar, another beauty supply store. I'm like, you're right. You're absolutely right. Do we need a daycare? How about putting daycares at each of the train stations, which will incentivize parents to say, you stop here and drop off your child, and then you jump on the train? How about making sure that there are coffee vendor opportunities at those train stations? So, and then let's give you a latte and a croissant while you get on the Metro and go to work.
I like that. Come on.
We got people there. Why don't we go ahead and literally steal from CTA people who get off the bus and say, we think, you could use the Metro more if Metro was willing to commit to improving the quality of their service. So I look forward to working with Metro to make the 71st Street and the South Shore line as strong as many of the suburban lines that I'm quite familiar with.
Yeah.
The last time I rode Metro south of Woodlawn, I was awed by the economic devastation that I saw at each of the stations where Metro stopped. Not until we got to the suburbs did I see a Metro station that was like 53rd Street, a thriving commercial enclave. Mm. That is not the way it has to be, but that's the way it is. So we got a huge commercial corridor. We have 13 schools that are in the 5th Ward, 4 high schools, and a world-class university. There should be no reason why every school in the 5th Ward is not cutting edge academically. When I think of what's going on at O'Keefe, I always talk about the immediate and the long term. The immediate, we need a stronger patrol so that kids can safely walk to and from school. Mm-hmm. That is not a question. We know it works, and we've lost some of that richness, and that's all about a little bit more funding and a little bit more coordination. We know that parents are children raising children.
Yep.
That's the definition of today's parents.
That's right.
They're children raising children. And we don't expect them to be adults, but yet we expect them to do adult duty when it comes to raising a child. We need programs for parents.
Yes, we do.
And how do you incentivize that? You know what? I'll be real candid. I had no idea what would make a 16-year-old or 17-year-old mom come to a program, because I'm not a 16 or 17-year-old single mom, but I know there are really talented 20 and 25-year-old single moms who made it, who are the ideal ones to tell 16-year-old moms, here are some strategies for success.
Yes.
Don't ask me. That is not my forte. But I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses. And while I work on my weaknesses, I surround myself by people who have strengths in those areas. Mm-hmm. I want single moms to talk to single moms about, here's what we need to do to change tomorrow.
Yes.
I want single dads to say to the young men what they need to do, how important it is to do what their young children need in the role modeling that they can create. So I guess the second thing, so when I go back to economic development along 71st, I look at education, but in education in this sense, it's safe passage, increasing that, but parenting. Aggressively going to help parents protect the next generation. So parents protecting the next generation. And again, they've become the bad guys in some ways of people dumping on parents because they're not doing the right job. Children raising children who were raised by children. We need to go back and say, let's start from the beginning.
That's right.
I told someone today the definition of, are you familiar with MAPU?
No.
MAPU is customer service. When you walk into McDonald's and they go, MAPU? That's their definition of customer service. Not, may I help you, MAPU? When you have learned that that is customer service, your first job, you think you might be doing a good job.
Oh, my goodness.
We need to break down from the very beginning how our children learn to deliver service, deliver quality products and service, how to teach them to excel and reach for a higher level of excellence, personally, community-wise, whatever way. And we start with MAPU, okay? So...
I thought you would get ready to give me an acronym.
And I have to credit Wayne Watson, who is the president of the city colleges, who is the first one who came up with that. That's the first time I heard it. But I've used it 25 years now of MAPU. That's where our children are starting. And that's when they've grown up saying customer services as much as MAPU. Now let's teach them, may I help you, please, and thank you. Give me a tip.
Exactly.
Got to be about funds. I'm not arguing that.
Yes.
Learn to make money, but there are ways to make money legally.
Yes. Absolutely. Now, when you've listed these neighborhoods within the Fifth Ward, the question that comes to mind for me is what is the voting percentage in those communities? Are we able to break that down? Do people participate at the level of the services that they require? Or is there some way that we need to educate people on how the politics work so they can know how to get funding for the resources that we're just discussing right now?
Too many individuals don't know how to access the resources. Children don't know our options.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, I worked as an advocate at a shelter for battered women. And my job was to go with a counselor when she was helping extract a woman from a volatile situation. And my job was to simply be a male in the room saying to him, you may not think you can do it. You will not hit me and get away with it. That's all I had to say. And 99%, and I have to say 99 because one guy didn't understand what I was saying, but 99% of them backed down immediately because they're cowards who beat women, who hit women. And a man saying it to them, unfortunately, requires them to think for a moment. And that's all we wanted. Calm down. Think for a moment about what you're doing. Because you know you will go to jail with me. And you should know you're going to go to jail if you hit her again. Mm-hmm. So 99% of the guys backed down. We were able to extract women from the home. And the situation was knowing the culture and learning. And again, it was teaching Wallace, teaching me how to do things. So I guess when I really think about the various communities and skills, it's what I've learned and how do I teach that to the next generation of people and what they're involved with. People need to know for the election that communities have stepped up to the plate at different levels, and we need to realize which came first. Was it because Grand Crossing was neglected by the Alderman for the last 24 years, that only 468 people in Grand Crossing, the precinct that is part of the Fifth Ward, only 468 people voted in the November 8th election from Grand Crossing.
So less than 500 people voted in that community.
Area of Grand Crossing, north of 75th, east of South Chicago, west of Stony Island, south of 71st Street. Woodlawn wasn't a whole lot better with 736 people voting. So the question goes, has that been the historic, and I have not run the data over the years, it would be good research to find out historically how has Woodlawn, how has Grand Crossing turned out for elections. The reality, and friends in Grand Crossing will say that the Alderman was never supportive of us and we just gave up, we stopped voting. That's very feasible. My goal would be to turn that around. But the flip side is, were they not politically engaged and aldermen felt, I don't need them because they're not going to vote anyway? It's a catch-22. So I reach out to Grand Crossing and say, vote, demonstrate to me that you know what's going on in your community and help me fight for you. That's my job. Help me fight for you. Show me that you're going to get in the fight. I mean, I know you, Rita, but I can tell you times more than once in my life where I jumped in a fight, said, yeah, and I looked around and the people I was defending were gone. Okay?
Yes, I've been there. Exactly.
What? I'm here to help y'all fight, and y'all went home and had coffee. Okay?
Tell us how it turned out.
That's right. That's exactly how it happened. Tell us how it turned out, So when it keeps going, Woodlawn had 1,500 people. I'm sorry, Kenwood had 1,500 people. Remember, Kenwood, with the exception of a few townhomes, are all high-rises, and they are obviously concerned about safety in high-rises more and more and more and more and more. and more of them will vote. But the alderperson was conspicuously absent from voters in the Algonquin and Iroquois building that got evicted from their place on December 23rd, because the city told them it was unsafe to go back into the building that they had paid rent for.
And so over the Christmas holiday, they could not be in their homes.
Not only their gifts were still there, their plants. 2 women tell of stories that a fireman got her cat out, but the other woman said they couldn't find her cat.
Ugh.
You know, when people went back in their apartments, some of them had been ransacked, who had gotten into the building.
Ugh.
So horrible stories. And I said, where is the alderman? Where is the alderman? She's not out of office yet. Okay? Where is she in dealing with those folks who needed her to defend, to stand up for them? Mm-hmm. So now they're suing the management company, but that reality. So Kenwood had 1,500 votes. The next 2, which are South Shore and Hyde Park, South Shore had 4,500 votes, 4,500 voters in South Shore. And that's a good number of folks to turn out to make their voice heard. And that's critical. And South Shore needs to recognize that. Last but not least, Hyde Park has 7,500 voters.
So okay, I can see what you're saying. So why Hyde Park gets all the attention is because all the people come out, more people come out to vote.
More people come out to vote, and the question goes back to which came first. Did Leslie give Hyde Park great treatment so Hyde Parkers supported her? Or did Hyde Parkers come out and vote and support her, and she in turn therefore gave them great treatment? The bottom line is, it's not about who voted for you or not. It's equity within our community. I don't care if you don't vote for me. That doesn't mean I'm not going to work for Revere Elementary School. I don't care if you didn't vote for me. If there are businesses who are looking for great places, I'm going to say, let's talk South Chicago. Mm-hmm. That's got to be the way it is. And unfortunately, those who know politics know it's all about who gives you money during your campaign.
Yeah. Greasy palms. Mm-hmm.
It's Chicago politics, unfortunately. And I may not win because I'm not willing to pay to play.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to. I'm not willing to beg for endorsements from people with money. The people who have given me money give me $50 and $100 and say, help buy signs so you can get your name out, Wallace. Mm-hmm. Help get a haircut, Wallace.
Well, I did see someone comment that they like your haircut, so that was a comment. Someone.
That is exactly right. For those of you who know, over the years I've gotten a little bit of woolly bully beard and nice afro, and someone told me I look like Fred Sanford.
No, it was Grady.
Grady. So, even worse. Even worse. So, encouraging people to get involved. I'm not sure we're going to get a good turnout this February 28th. I will pledge a better turnout in 4 years, because my whole candidacy and my whole role as an alderman will be encouraging folks to step up and let their voice be heard. And one way you let your voice be heard is how you vote and when you vote. Mm-hmm. So I anticipate a significant rise in the next year's election. Even though this year I would be encouraging folks to go vote and to support it, they're gun shy. They've been burned. They're not believers, because when I became the head of the empowerment zone for the city of Chicago, my first community meeting, I spent an hour and a half listening to people yell at me and scream at me and tell me that I was going to be just like the last executive director, that do nothing, solve nothing, fix nothing of the mayor. And that's who they were. That's for an hour and a half, they yelled at me that that's who I was going to be. And of course, to this day, they go back and they go, you turned it around. Bottom line, you turned it around. That's what I'm going to do. I promise.
Well,
did I just promise that?
Yes, you did, and we suggested you not promise. But anywho, one of the you started talking about one of the questions that I have, and it's like, how can we encourage the average person of the Fifth Ward to really see that it's not just voting is a civic responsibility, but if we're going to transform our community, we have to have stronger presentation. We have to have people who are committed to the future. And people always say children are our future, but there's no commitment to children if you look in the education system, in the community, and how people police our children. I mean, that should be enough for people to go and vote so that we can make changes around here. So what would you say the average person, what can we do to get them to come out and vote?
Let me first say how much I value this kind of opportunity, Rita. All the panels I've been on, they would say, how can you help the average person value the future of our children in 30 seconds, Wallace?
No, you can take all the time you want.
They're not really interested, in my opinion, when they do that in 30 seconds. And I understand the format, but they need to understand that for a thinker, that is not the format that will give a substantive answer.
Yeah.
So part of it is exactly the role modeling we all need to do every day. My grandchildren come to events so they can see options down the line. Options. And we minimize that word, but options for those of us who've chosen well is a commodity that is incredibly valuable. The stories, which are many, when I was going to high school, I wanted to go to Hyde Park. That's where my girlfriend was going. That's where I wanted to go. And my father wanted me to go to Mount Carmel. And I'm like, I'm not going to all-boys school. We argued, and then one day he came to me and he said, I've taught you your whole life, you should have options. You should have choices. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. He said, you have a choice. You can go to Mount Carmel or Culver Military Academy. Your choice.
It's your choice.
Needless to say, I went to Mount Carmel, but the creative, valuable lesson was he gave me a choice. He gave me options. Our children need to see options. They need to know that there are choices to make and that they are not destined to be just because of where they are.
That's right.
In the movie about Stephen Biko, Cry Freedom, as they walk through Soweto, she said, the only crime of this brilliant child is the township that she was born into. Our children are born into townships. Our children are born into poverty, no matter how bright they are, and we don't know how to show them ways out. That's part of our goal. That's part of our challenge. And that's doable. I mean, my frustration is that this hasn't been the goal of the alderperson. This is my goal. I'm not used to. I don't fail. Forget not used to. I don't fail. The empowerment zone, we turned it around. Minority students dropping out of school, we turned it around. It's possible to do it. And I've seen such rich talent in a cabinet of leaders like you, like Diane, like Don Rashid, like
June, Miss Francis, Anthony. I mean, we have a crew.
What a great crew to turn it around. Okay? Turn it around. If if nothing else, we just need to think, how are we going to turn this around? One of my favorite shows, one of my favorite songs, Uptown Funk.
Oh, yeah.
If we show up, we're going to show out. Okay? You know, we're going to show out. We're going to show how it's done. If Fifth Ward can't do it with all of the talent and richness we have, I don't know who can.
Yeah.
I really do believe that, Rita.
I believe it too, and I'm just so grateful. I love how the universe just puts me right where I need to be. You know, just yep. This is what you're gonna do next. You know, you know, and then my life becomes enriched because of that. And like you're saying, I'm not a person. I'm used to failure, but I don't fail, right? And I grew up in those communities and environments that you're talking about. So I know that you can come from that type of neglect, poverty, and disadvantage. I don't even like that term. But you can come from those type of communities and still grow into the person you came here to be. But you do need role models. You do need encouragement. You do need someone to actually support your vision as a child too, and give you different visions and give you options.
That's right. Give you options. Mm-hmm. Give you options.
Yeah.
And you know, if a child is raising a child who was raised by a child, they don't know the options.
They don't even know the options.
All they know is what they know. Mm-hmm. And being blessed to have lived around the world, to have been mentored by some of the best leaders in the world, I don't know if there are any limits to my options.
There are no limits. The only limits that any of us have are self-imposed.
That's exactly right. Teach our children that.
Yes.
Teach. So I told someone that if I don't become an alderman, they said, what will you do? And I've said, I think I need to work full-time back in education.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the most rewarding parts of my life. Helping businesses do better is valuable. Helping community organizations grow is essential. Mm-hmm. But helping children see the options, what more rewarding opportunity is there? So I plan to be the alderman who will lead with education, who will develop economic development, who will value where we live. We live on the lake. We have Jackson Park in our back. It's not even, it is our yard. It's our front yard.
Yes, that's right.
Jackson Park is our
That's
front
right.
yard.
We have beaches. We have beaches. You know how many people want these beaches?
Yep. We have the Museum of Science and Industry.
And the South Shore Cultural Center and Promontory Point. I mean, come on.
And Wooded Isle. You know, come on. We have remember I said, we're a tourist community also.
Yes.
And that is something that many communities, certainly on the South Side, don't even understand. Couldn't even come close to understanding what 1 million tourists a year do to your psyche and your culture and your economic development. Mm-hmm. So that's an exciting part of the Fifth Ward that we need to understand and tap into it. I want to know, where are there more and more and more entrepreneurs saying, I need to hear what you plan. A guy came to me and said, well, if the Tigerwood Golf Course is going here, here, and here, I think we need to open up businesses on the corner of 67th and Stony Island.
That's right. That's right.
He came and saw and is proposing. And when somebody tells me, well, you know, we don't want those strangers coming to our community, I go, I understand. What's your plan for it? Mm-hmm. And I don't have any plan. That's why strangers from outside of our community are going to come in. Mm-hmm. We need to help those young entrepreneurs understand the options in our community because they don't see the future. So how do we help the business person? How do we help the athlete? How do we help the scholar? How do we help the musician see the future?
Yes.
We're the... I don't know if I want to mention her name yet because I don't know if she's supporting me. But last night I had a beverage with a world-class musician who, an international world-class musician who teaches our children. That's her passion. And to know her, to be in touch with her, and to say, how can we make what you do, move it up a level? So if you deal with 100 kids a year, how are we going to make that 200? Okay? If you train 30 golf kids a year, how are we going to make that 60? If you help people in their mind and spirituality understand themselves and are healthier so that they can pass that on to their children and their families, how do we double that?
How do we double that? I know when Spirit told me 12 years ago to duplicate myself, I was like, what? Well, how do we do that? I had to go into a whole meditation for a week, and it was like certified life coaches. And I asked myself, well, you have some audacity, but that's it right there. That's what an entrepreneur does. They come up with ideas and say, okay, well, that's what we're going to do. And so we do have to create ways to teach people to tap into those inner resources.
And I am blessed. I don't even pretend I made this on my own.
Yes.
I have gone back many times in my life and earmarked seminal moments that helped me move to the next level.
That's right.
Whether it was a parent, somebody at my church, somebody at my school, a student who helped me understand and move to the next level. I am blessed to have been surrounded by those people my entire life. And you and Diane and that crew, you guys fit that. You are helping me to the next level. And there are days that I go home and I go like, how am I blessed to have met you guys? Honest to God, dude.
You don't say, boy, oh my goodness, they had a knockout brawl today.
Yep. You know I do. But then I go home and I go, see, they see it and they know, and I'm not stupid. I know richness when I see it. I don't even have to, it doesn't have to hit me in the face. I see richness in every aspect around me, and I would be stupid not to tap into your richness.
Yeah.
Not to tap into your vision, your energy, your spirituality. I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
And here's what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to make sure our community benefits from it as well.
Absolutely.
Every strength you give me, I promise I will pass it on to other members of our community for as long as I can.
That's wonderful, Wallace. So let me ask you, what can our listeners, they're listening, and I hope they're as inspired by you as I am, as our group, we just love you. We appreciate you in so many ways. But what can our listeners do to actually support you if they're really ready to get on board with this? And see you elected on February 28th. What can they do to support you today?
There are three ways. And again, very clearly, I don't want your money, I want your vote. Okay? People out here raising $100,000, I don't want your money. Now, my fundraiser will go, take that off. Rita, don't print that.
I know, because he's already told you, stop talking like we want their money.
But that's how campaigns have always run. They've taken money and used it to market their name and their message. I have been driven by the history of being people rich. Mm-hmm. Human capital, not financial capital, human capital. So what I want, three things. I want everybody who hears this, if you know somebody who lives in the Fifth Ward, I want you to call all of them and say, he's the real deal. Check out this podcast. Check out his website. He's the real deal. That won't cost you anything. That won't be a challenge to you, but it will take that $1 million, that $100,000 campaign war chest and whittle away at it. Call somebody and say, he's the real deal. Number two, there are things that I can't get donated. Most things people donate. Most people, graphic design, technology. I have been surrounded by some of the most incredible people around. But there are things that I can't get donated. The U.S. Post Office doesn't donate mail. I tried to convince them.
I do have some stamps I can give you. Right?
Yes. You laugh, but really, stamps are valuable, okay? And the point of it is, there are people who don't know me or my message. They don't know my name or my message. And the only way they're going to hear my name and my message is delivering a mailer to their house or to have a yard sign in the street. They don't donate those, so I have to pay for them. So number two, after putting the word out, is donating. Going to my website, which is wallacegoode.com, and donate will pop up. But you know what? I believe that the human capital is going to take us across the finish line without the money. People, again, my campaign people will go, Wallace, don't say that, don't tell people you don't need their money. I need their money, but I need their votes so much more than money, and it doesn't cost you anything. My friends are not wealthy folks. They don't have a lot of money to give. They're paying rent, they're taking care of their kids, they're making sure that their family is okay. And I don't want them to give me their money so that I can buy a sign to tell people my name. I say, save your money and promise me you'll tell 25 people he's the real deal. So I ask every single person, 25 people, tell them I'm the real deal and to vote for me. If you got a little bit of extra cash, help me pay for the postage, help me pay for the haircut, help me pay for, Red, who I love dearly, the barber. It's like he gave me a discount, but he didn't do it free. Okay, And last but not least, I know that our success will be predicated upon how much we collectively work together to resolve these challenges. And the challenges, whether it's economics, education, the environment, whether it's alternatives to the streets, access to quality health care, or assault on assault weapons, I need support. I need people who are going to step up to the plate and say, Wallace, I am on your team and I will help you fight those issues. I can't say which is number one because they all simultaneously need to be addressed. Day one, we go after assault weapons. Day one, we go after higher quality education. We work on the environment. We work on the economy. We work on getting quality health care accessible to our community. Day one. Those are the things that I need people to do. And I think I know there are people out there. So I need volunteers on election day to pass out material to say, vote, get involved. I need people who are willing to join me at a fundraiser and raise their hand to say, I'm willing to donate my resources, which are time, energy, and effort, and dollars. That's what people can do right away. Does that make sense?
All of it makes sense. And I'm sitting here going, and I am the volunteer coordinator for election day. So inbox me if you want to be on our team. I'm going to be playing full out that day. So, yes.
Here's one more thing that I always think of. Even though I grew up in Woodlawn and I now live in Hyde Park, I'm spending a lot of time learning to understand South Shore and Grand Crossing. So I need people who are in those communities to say, let me give you a walk in my neighborhood.
Yes, walk my hood. That's right.
Jack, who is with the Promontory Conservation, took me on a tour of the point, and I got to see the point through a conservationist's eyes. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Because as he talked, I saw through his words what he saw. And suddenly I realized how I could help him. You know, it wasn't that I had not always valued the point. It wasn't that it wasn't a special place, but his words allowed me to figure out how I could help him. And therefore, walk me around South Shore, walk me around Grand Crossing. Let me see your community through your eyes so that I can figure out how I can help you even more. That's specifically what I know people should do.
Yes, that's wonderful. I know you walked with us on the prayer march here a couple of months ago. Was it a couple of months? What is this? Yeah, right?
At least. It's been almost 3 months now. See how time flies?
Yes. I was looking at how long ago was that?
And I've had people walk me in various parts. You know, I have a friend, Ethan, who walks me in, he lives on 72nd, and he walks me around 71st to 72nd, the lake to Euclid. He took me over to the South Shore Sanctuary, Nature Sanctuary, to show me that this is in jeopardy and what are we going to do to take care of it, to save it. I had someone walk me around 67th to 79th, 67th to 69th over by Oglesby and Cranston and say, these high-rises, how do you help the people who live here who don't know each other become a community? How do you help them, Wallace? I'm like, and people are like, how do you help them? What are you going to do for the people who live in this building? You know? Well, first is to help them understand that they are not alone. And secondly, to help them understand that I am genuinely here to help them. So let's talk about it. What are your challenges? And we are very creative people.
Yes.
Given the opportunity.
Yes.
Given the opportunity.
Yes. Well, Wallace, you know, I also want to let people know that your fundraiser is coming up on February 1st, I believe.
Next Wednesday, correct.
Next Wednesday. And you can find, on my Facebook page, you can find a couple of times where you can actually join us. You can also find ways to donate. And I invite you guys to come and meet Wallace and his family, Amy, his wonderful wife, and Kim, his campaign manager.
and daughter.
And daughter, yes. She's his daughter.
That has been really, really good also, Rita. My family has stepped up. And I asked one volunteer, why are you volunteering for me? And he was so insightful. His name is Reverend Monty. And Reverend Monty said, I see your family supporting you. I don't care what people say about family values. That speaks volumes.
Your really family does.
Helping you. Your grandson, your 8-year-old grandson is helping you. What more do I need to know that you're a family man?
Your son-in-law is
My son-in-law.
That's right. He comes out. I mean, come on. And that does speak volume, because here, anytime you're taking on a leadership role that's going to involve community, if your family isn't backing you, it's very difficult to have success, because they'll pull you back, but your family is pushing you forward, and they're right there with you.
24/7. They built the foundation. They fill in when I fail, you know. When I don't pick up the toothpaste like I'm supposed to at the store, somebody's like, got your back.
I got it. I got it.
Don't worry. I know you are working on getting ready for your radio interview. I'll get the toothpaste. Okay. You know?
Thank you.
That's so small, but it's huge in the scheme of things. When I really think about all the components that are critical to making this happen, I think it's important to understand the pieces. I think, and I say PIECESS.
Yes.
That physically, we need to think about how to stay in shape. Intellectually, we need to understand how we need to continue to help grow intellectually. Emotionally, how we need to be stable. Culturally, we need to understand where we came from. Economically, socially, and spiritually. Those are the pieces that guide me every single day. And I review them like plates on a stick. How am I doing physically? How am I doing intellectually? How am I doing emotionally, culturally, economically, socially, and spiritually? And if all those plates are spinning, I'm okay.
You're okay. Yes, you are okay. And we're grateful for that. And when you're not okay, you have a group of us that let you know.
Absolutely. Support system.
That's right.
Supports. And people don't understand that village concept. Yeah. Peace Corps. I lived in a village. Mm-hmm. I lived in a village in Central Africa. I lived in a village in the Solomon Islands. And I saw the elders and the little ones involved in this village and them welcoming me, in the village. We have to live that experience. I have a friend who lives in Kenwood, who's a returned Peace Corps volunteer. And I met with Sarah today. And Sarah and I have this automatic, unspoken bond because for Americans to go live in a village in Africa, most of us don't ever get to do that.
Nope.
And I've been able to do it twice. I am blessed. And so is Sarah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. That's wonderful. And I think it really does. See, that's how you pique the interest. Now people can say, oh, what would it be like to live in a village in Africa?
That's right.
That's what that does. So it's okay to do that. Yeah, we do have to venture out more. I agree with that.
I'm willing to have that meeting anytime with anyone who wants to consider the Peace Corps. When I was the dean at the University of Chicago, the university got an award from the Peace Corps for having the largest number of students in an undergraduate school under 5,000 ever go in a year.
Wow.
Ever. 1 year, we recruited more students into the Peace Corps. And when you send anyone outside this country and they come back with a totally different perspective.
Oh, totally.
You understand that. Those kids you took to Egypt,
yes.
Those kids we went to Ghana, they come back and they see the world so differently. That's invaluable. So I get excited about that. And that was just one career, being Dean of International Programs in Peace Corps. That is only a part of the learning and the blessed experiences that I've had that guide me every day in my decision making.
That's so wonderful. And I'm sitting here because I'm thinking, that you and Wallace can sit here and talk all night, but we don't.
You're right.
So I'm gonna bring this podcast to a close, but I just want to again thank you and your family for just allowing you to be the leader that you have been and that you continue to be, because it has made a difference for so many people. And I know that you're going to continue to do that, but I just want to acknowledge that because it's real, and I see it, I appreciate it, and I know a lot of other people do too. So I just want to thank you for being Wallace E. Goode Jr.
Thank you. Years ago, I described my work as nailing Jell-O to the wall.
No.
At the end of the day, all you have really is a wall of nails.
Because the Jell-O didn't slid all of it.
But every day on the campaign, someone brings to my attention. They say, Wallace, 10 years ago I came to you and asked you for help, and you could have sent me to somebody else, but you said, okay, come on here, let's sit down, let's figure out how to do this. So I got your back on this campaign. Every day somebody tells me that kind of story. And I'm candid, I don't even remember sometimes.
Yes.
Because that's just what I do.
That's right.
But they remember and say, you could have sent me away. You could have said you were too busy. Mm-hmm. But you stopped what you were doing. You sat down and you helped this young African-American couple figure out how to do something. I got your back now, Wallace. Mm-hmm. And that to me, I believe is enough. That yes. I believe they are out there, and the goal is to get the message to them that I'm running.
That's right.
And I need just
That's right.
You are helping me do that tremendously.
And I will continue to do that. That's right.
You and the crew. You and the crew. Y'all, you are ruthless.
Yeah.
You take no prisoners.
My children are like, you're getting into politics, really, Ma? Like, how do you even have time for that?
If nothing else, think about this team working together in the future on issues, whatever they are.
Oh, yes.
Whatever they are.
Oh, yes.
What a great team. I get goosebumps sometimes thinking about that. And that goes back to, again, Mount Carmel taught us to excel. I mean, they at times were ruthless in their push. But in hindsight, Mount Carmel would say, "Are you tired?" And I'm like, "Yes." They're like, "So?"
Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going. And when you know that you can do that, the next time you have to do it, it's not that hard.
It's not a question.
That's right. So I am blessed to have been influenced that way in their style. I am really blessed to have parents who told me I could do and be anybody I wanted to be. Mm-hmm. And I am blessed to have been surrounded by friends, new and old, who believed in me. And to whom much is given, much is expected.
Absolutely.
I promise to work as hard as I can to deliver what we need. Yes. I may not always be successful. I don't even pretend that. But I know that you will get the best.
Yeah.
That includes my family. I volunteer them all the time.
You sure do. Kim?
Amy?
Amy, that's right. So before we sign off, yes. Wallace, can you give people your website again and tell them how to donate to your campaign?
Excellent. So my website is www.wallace, WALLACE, Goode, GOODE, one word, wallacegoode.com. Go there because you will learn more about the things that I've done, who I am, and what I plan to do. I didn't even tell you I went to the University of Vermont. I thought I was just going to another part of the United States. I swear it was another country. Okay, they didn't have a whole lot of black folks up there when I went up there. It was a new experience, but a rich learning opportunity. And that's the word that I'll always share with us. So wallacegoode.com. And if you need to reach out to me, vote Wallace at wallacegoode.com.
Thank you. And I want to thank listen, this has been great. I mean, I didn't even realize we've been talking now for almost 2 hours. So
that's a normal conversation.
That's a normal conversation. That's exactly right. So I just want to thank those of you who have listened, or if you tune in at another time, just thank you. And I really want to encourage you to get out and vote. I want to encourage you to participate in your community. And if nothing else, please, let's start elevating the quality of life for our children. That's what this is really all about. We have to make a difference for our children, okay? And the way to be through that is through our community and civic involvement, because their environment is what makes a difference for them.
We need to pass that message on to our friends, our family, and our fans. And again, what can they do? They can pass on the message. And after a while, when enough people continue and consistently hear our message, then there will be change.
There will be change.
There will be change.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining in, and we will see you next time. All right.
I hope when I become the alderman, you help facilitate this on a weekly basis.
There you go. We can have our chats, our weekly chats.
Weekly basis.
What Alderman Goode.
Good for the 5th Ward.
Good for the hood. All right, everybody. Good night. Thanks, Wallace.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Recording stopped.